We are presently in the third section of the psychic element in man in the development of love as a means for linking oneself with the divine. Now we come to the third, the yoga of works proper. Proper because whether it is knowledge or love, ultimately they have to be expressed in dynamic terms on the level of practical effects. But the yoga of work concerns the actual dynamization of the will in the life force. Life is impossible without exertion. Where there is life, there is movement, there is activity. It is said in the Gita that nobody can live and breathe unless there is some throughout of energy, some formation of energy on the active plane. Here we come to the crux of another problem. It has been a traditional attitude to consider works as foreign to genuine spirituality. It is said that works belong to the field of nature and God belongs to the field of the soul. The two do not meet. They may overlap at certain stages of the journey, but they have to pass, and that is because the field of work, the field of life energy, is contaminated. One may start with purity of motive, but one gets bogged up at some stage or other. That is why works are to be rejected. If works are inevitable, then it is argued, let us have only those works which are indispensable for the maintenance of the body, or, to make a concession, those works which nourish the upward aspiration. Second it, without involving the higher effort of the soul Godward. Works like worship, prayer, adoration, and such like things, perhaps added works of philanthropy, helping the poor, the needy, in order to purify oneself, to throw away the dross of selfishness, and thus lighten one's burden on the way. That is why, whether in all traditions, Eastern and Western, works are frowned upon as distracting and foreign to the central purpose of the spiritual quest. But the seeker of the integral path cannot afford to subscribe to this view, because the very object of this yoga is the elevation of life, the perfection of life, the transformation of life as it is into the higher terms. It is not possible to wait till the way of knowledge has enlightened the being sufficiently enough for one to launch upon the yoga of work safely. Nor is it possible to wait till the yoga of love has purified and readied the being for launching upon the sacrifice of work. Because whether it is knowledge or love, they themselves need the support of the life force. After all, the life force is the link between spirit and matter, between mind and life, between mind and matter, between love and matter. It is the life force that has to dynamize these eternal and higher values in terms of life. If knowledge is truly divine in its origin, if love is assuredly divine in its origin, Sri Aurobindo says, even the much abused and traduced life force, that too in its origin is divine. Life force is a power of God. In its original purity, it is a projection of the force of consciousness, the pure force of consciousness at the head of manifestation. Just as the supramental consciousness projects itself as the mental consciousness in the lower triple world, just as the pure existence congeals itself as solid matter in the realm below, the consciousness force, the Chit Shakti as it is called in Indian terminology, projects itself as the life force. In its origin, in its native character, power, which is the characteristic of life force, is neither good nor bad, neither moral nor immoral. It depends upon what use you put to it. If the works of the life force in the world, in the day-to-day life, have a tendency to involve man in petty rounds of egoism, petty rounds of lower nature, it is because in the general deformation that has come over the world in the course of involution and evolution, the life force is controlled and made subservient to the desire soul. In the course of evolution, desire, which is the first motive in this world of ignorance for action, has by sheer habit formed a centralization, and that is the desire soul. No action is undertaken without some desire. No movement is released into action without some impelling desire motive. This desire soul is at the center of this deformation of life force, of the original creative and liberative life force into a force for bondage. The first step for the seeker of integral path, once he is engaged in the yoga of work, is to become conscious of this element in him, the desire soul, which has to be rejected. It's not easy to reject. such an ages-long formation in nature. It is enough as a first step that one is sincere and discriminating enough to feel and scrutinize where the desire comes into play. A ruthless analysis of oneself, one's thoughts, one's inner movements is called upon, is indispensable if this desired soul is to be weakened in its hold over nature. Once one goes to the root of this problem of localizing the desired soul and isolating it, the true being of the life force, the true vital being, begins to emerge. And this inner vital being is a warrior of the divine. It is the agent of the divine consciousness projected in evolution at the life level. It is the effectuating agent. And once this inner vital being is gradually induced to come out and assume charge, one feels a flood of energy, a mighty wave of power, of limitless capacity takes possession of oneself. It is not easy to support this impact of the inner vital being. It is very easy for the lower elements of nature to get mix up with this emergent vital being, the true being of life force, and deflect its purpose. That is why Sri Aurobindo and the mother insist upon a merciless purification of motive, an inner cleanliness, no allowance of subterfuges, no toleration of the cunning of the vital mind. To this end, it is necessary to invoke the psychic being which is behind. After all, what we call the human personality, what passes for the soul, the desired soul, the ego formation, is only a shadow of the inner soul. And that inner soul, as projected in evolution, is the psychic being, a delegate of the immanent divine in evolution. This psychic being, psychic presence, is to be enlivened and induced to come forward and preside over the activity of the emergent vital being. Left to itself, the vital being does not have the necessary direction, the necessary illumination. It acts, it effectuates where it is directed. It is there that the guidance of the psychic being is necessary. By devotion, by purification, by aspiration, by eliminating all contrary movements, by the cultivation of the elements of beauty, of love, of harmony, of peace, one creates the climate for the psychic influence to come forward and slowly organize the ground for the psychic being to come to the front and take charge. But the psychic guidance, the psychic direction, the psychic control is not the supreme guidance, the supreme wisdom, the supreme control. The psychic is more or less as a lamp, a light to show the way, to point out which is the right and which is the wrong. It is a witness conscious, acting when it is waited upon. It is not a power which has in its control to guide man all through. It is a helper on the way. The psychic itself is a delegate of the parent divine, and it summons to the situation a divine power transcendent of this circle of evolution, above the triple nature of mind, life and body. There is a divine presence, there is a divine element, the divine Shakti, which is waiting, which is even now guiding from behind the veil. Once the psychic is brought to the front, and once aspiration is joined to it, the next step is to invoke the higher power, the power beyond the realm of the triple nature, to intervene, to guide. This is what Sri Aurobindo calls the intervention of the higher power, the consciousness force of the divine, what is called the divine Shakti in Indian terminology. This Shakti again does not work all of a sudden, because the human receptacle is not ready. If the divine person were to manifest at a stroke, the unprepared body would be dashed to pieces. Like an unbaked vessel cracking, the human body, unless it is prepared and ready through the fire of tapasya, is sure to crack at the first impact of the mighty puissance. That is why the divine in its providence intervenes in graded steps, mildly, less mildly, withdraws till nature assimilates the workings of the higher power, waits till it is ready for the next intervention. And these are the periods which the Vedic mystics call the day and night. The days are the bright periods when all is joyous, all is bright, all is handled by a higher force, all is sweetened by the currents of love and sweetness and harmony emanating from the psychic being, and it is a wonderful smooth sailing. But this cannot last. Nature demands time to assimilate. The lower nature pulls down. There is the physical body, there are the habits of the vital, there are the grooves of the mental being, which insist on following their own habits, and they pull down. Then for the higher power withdraws and waits till the present gains are assimilated, organized and made part of the being. These are the nights of the soul, what is called elsewhere the flows of this despond, but in the Veda they are called the nights, the day and night, the luminous and the dark periods. It is by a constant invocation reception and utilization of the higher descents of the power, guided at our level by the psychic perception, that this journey of the human sacrifice in works towards God proceeds. These are the three steps. Elimination of the desire soul, letting the true vital being come forward under the guidance of the psychic being, the evocation of the higher power, the higher divine Shakti in the situation to accept the sacrifice, and in time even to conduct the sacrifice. Translated in other terms, it means that one has in day-to-day life to give up desire for fruits of work. It is not possible to give up desire immediately. But the main work that one does, one shall not think of the fruits of the work. One does the work that is allotted, that is given by circumstances, or that falls to one's share, does it to one's best as a dedication, as a self-consecration, but does not desire for a particular fruit. Once this desire for fruit is abandoned, next is the desire for particular work that has to be rejected. There should be no choice. There should be no preference. Whatever work comes, it has to be done in an impersonal manner. First, the giving up of the desire for fruit. Next, the giving up of desire for work itself. Work has to be done, but not out of preference, not out of personal choice. And the true test, whether one has given up desire, one has left the last vestiges of desire behind, is equality. Do I react to situations, to men and things with equality? Does success elate me? Does failure depress me? If I come across difficult situations, do I get upset? Do I feel insulted or downgraded if my view does not prevail? If the answer is affirmative, it means I am still in the grip of desire. And what is behind desire? Ego. This is the first step, practical step that a seeker has to take. Second, to become conscious of the psychic presence and so shape one's life that the road is cleared for the rays of the psychic to emerge in the front. Third, to open oneself in the higher regions of the mind, in the width of the heart, so that the transcendent power of the divine gets an opportunity, gets an opening, a receptive opening to descend, to ingress and spread itself. These are the milestones of the yoga of work. The broad stations are: one gives up the fruits of work to the divine. Second, one gives the choice of work to the divine. Third, one loses the sense of the doer of action. One becomes first an instrument, then even loses the sense of being an instrument. One becomes just a channel of the divine force an unresisting channel, at the end of which one is just identified with the divine Shakti and becomes one with it. This, in brief, is the course of the yoga of works. We have not met for long. If our friends have any questions.
You're saying that one should give up all desire for particular work. Does that also imply that one should not enjoy whatever work one is doing?
Certainly it is legitimate and expected of the worker that he shares the delight of work. Ultimately, the meaning of all life is delight. There is a divine delight that underflows all movement. And the truer one's spirit, the true spirit in which one works, the more it is so, the more the felicity which flows into the being. One should take the joy, one should communicate the joy if possible, but one shall not be attached to that work. If the work is changed, you should be able to link yourself with the same stream of joy, whatever the work. It is not the work that is important. It is the spirit of consecration and the way in which you work out the consecration that is important, and it is that gives the joy. It is when you are linked with the divine through the channel of work that the delight, the bliss flows. That should happen whatever the work we do. Point is, one shall not be attached to a particular work. One should certainly enjoy, but in the true spirit. Just as one can enjoy food, one can enjoy nice music, one can enjoy nice scenery, nature, one can enjoy a piece of literature. All life is a flow of bliss, and it is a measure of one touching the depths of life when one effortlessly feels the course of bliss. If we feel a certain joy in work here for the divine, whereas we could not have derived that much joy in similar work elsewhere, it only shows that the work here is organized on a different level, and you do it on a deeper level than you could have done it outside. You are helped to do it in the right spirit and on the right level.
What do you mean by fruits of action? Fruits of action.
The results of action. I want to build a house. I am asked to build. I am asked to plant. I am asked to construct something, for instance. See, we have a certain image. If it does not go according to our ideas, if it does not happen as we want it to be, one shall not be depressed. It is the results are in the hands of God. Ours is but to work. Fruits means the results of work. Normally, if I write, there is an undercurrent of feeling that it must be a beautiful article, a beautiful paper. People must say it is very nice. But to have that in mind is to have desire for the fruit of writing. If I do write because I have something precious to be expressed, put in writing, and the moment it is done, it is finished. It does not matter how it is received. Then it means I have no desire for the fruit of writing. 90% of work in the world is of this kind, goaded by desire for a particular fruit. Yeah.
When you try to invoke a psychic being by creating a positive atmosphere and wanting the fun for all those positive things, how can we know, or let's say our progress, how can we recognize the presence of the psychic being?
It is very easy, in a sense, to recognize the psychic presence or influence. It is also very difficult and tricky because the emotional being very many times masquerades as the psychic. For instance, the first term of expression of psychic is love. But on a human level, the emotional being may feel certain attraction and translate itself as a pull, as a sympathy, as a what is called love. It is very easy to confuse this love of the emotional being, this joy of the emotional being in the presence of another as the psychic love. But the true character of the psychic is a certain peace about it, no agitation, no excitement. When it is emotional, there is an excitement, but there is absolutely no excitement. It is a quiet, uncaused, self-existing sweetness, love, as love as force of harmony, as a universal sympathy, an attraction to only what is beautiful, to what is nice in others, an aversion to ugliness, to gossip, to pinpointing the defects of others. If others are bad, defective, there is a pity, there is a compassion that flows, not not the working of the critical faculty. There is a constant flow to merge oneself in the divine. Everything reminds of the divine. Life becomes a poem of celestial bliss. There is no mistake. At times, if the nature is recalcitrant, obstructive, there is a psychic sadness, a regret, a feeling, inexplicable feeling of sadness. It may come out in the form of tears, or it may not. But one feels that the whole being is not keeping pace. So where the rest of the nature lags behind, there is also a psychic sadness. But when the psychic guides, there is a certain conviction about it. One knows it is certain, for certain that it is true. It is a self-evident pointer to what is right and what is not right. One doesn't have to reason. One feels convinced it is so. One doesn't have to make an effort. There is an effortless perception wherever one sees. This is right, this is not right. The ego is nowhere with its posturing. One feels soiled and tainted at the first touch of selfishness, at the first return of selfishness from the lower nature. One feels terribly soiled at the first surge of passion, anger. One feels as if one is stabbed after an attack of anger and hostility. These are the signs that I could give of the presence or the emergence of the psychic.
You say that the psychic can feel sadness and psychic the psychic never is unhappy. It's never.
Essentially, psychic cannot be unhappy, but the psychic being which is evolving, that has a certain participation in thought, in feeling. And at the level of feeling, he does feel denied. He does feel shut up when the nature refuses to cooperate. So this is its reaction. Reaction as expressed in our surface nature. One knows there is no reason why one should be sad, but it is so. For instance, when somebody leaves the ashram, maybe even for a brief while, there is a certain sadness. It's not that there is that lower attachment, but when the soul goes physically away from the mother soul, there is a regret. I suppose involution or evolution in human terms implies all these side effects.
You speak of the psychic presence, the psychic emanation, and psychic being. But where is the border?
In most, it is the psychic essence, only the spark, essence. In course of evolution, the psychic essence develops into a psychic entity. Entity does not have a personality yet.
But it has a definition, it has a border.
A psychic entity. That psychic entity, when you go on adding experience after experience and do the grades higher and higher, it develops into a being. And when this psychic being develops into a personality, that is the stage when man enters spiritual life. Nobody enters true spiritual life unless the development of the psychic has arrived at the stage of the development of the psychic being. This psychic being does not come forward immediately. It first sends an influence, which is an indirect touch. When the constant touches of the influence, the nature is ready, the rest of the being is ready, it sends a direct emanation, which can be imaged as a ray, a projection of its consciousness. It's not an influence, it is something more than an influence. And when the constant working of the psychic emanations, nature is ready, the psychic being itself comes to the front and dominates and leads this triple formation of mental being, the life being, and the physical being. Till then, the psychic being holds them from behind. When it emerges, it assumes control over all the three. So this is more or less the course of the development of the psychic being. The divine spark as the psychic essence, putting on form a psychic entity, developing into a psychic being with a personality of its own. Yes?
When you said before that people who physically leave the mother, they feel this sadness. I've heard many stories like somebody told me that somewhere someone said that if someone left, sometimes the soul gets so unhappy, they'll leave the person and go back to the mother. And after 2 years, the person's body dies eventually, so he can't live without his soul. And things like the mother's physical body extends for 7 miles, and all who live within it are like physically living within the mother's body, and things like this, which sort of implies that. Also, another one was that there was some guy practicing heavy tapasya in the ashram, and then he decided to leave and become a guru. And with the implication of, as soon as he left, of course, his progress ended. These sort of things sort of imply that unless you're living in Oregon or living in Pondicherry in the ashram, you can't really practice Sri Aurobindo yoga, let's say in New York City or San Francisco or Paris, because you're not within 7 miles of the mother's physical body. Is this totally just like this? Nothing?
It's not like that. There is no rule as such. Even the psychic sadness which I said one feels at physical separation, even for however temporary a period, is not a permanent affair. It is just at that moment for some time one feels. Thereafter the link is re-established and one feels in tune, one in communion. It is just when you live, there is that feeling. For some, not all. Some don't feel it at all because they live in constant communion. They carry the same link. But some find it difficult. It is only an illustration that I said. Certainly, the contact with the mother or Sri Aurobindo or the divine as expressed in them is not decided by the physical distance. For those who are in the happy circumstance of communing with her inwardly, whatever the outer circumstance, it does not matter even if you are in Siberia. Her presence is felt and one can do what he wants. But for those who are not developed, for those who are not, strong enough to establish that link and connection and live in that relation, they need the preparatory period of living near the central fire so that the being is prepared. In spiritual matters, ultimately, physical distance has no relevance. Just as when you close your eyes and think of something, you can be in America, you can be in Russia. There is no distance there. And if we know, we can make an impact. Similarly, in matters of spirit, physical distance does not count at all. But just as when you construct a building, certain scaffoldings are necessary, certain precautions are necessary, till the spiritual development has come to a certain mature stage, it is incumbent upon some to come closer to the source of inspiration and imbibe it. Not for all. Those who need to do it are brought here. Those who do not need, there is no call on them.
Also, what you just said, that, for instance, these people who come to work in the matrimony or come to live in the ashram, it's not really a matter of free choice, but rather they're called, and you go. It's